Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and what a historic weekend of motorsport it was. We have already looked at the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500, so check those videos out as well. We also had a whole load of other race series from all over the world. Seriously, whoever puts these calendars together needs to be cursed. We have two Formula E races from Shanghai, China, Formula 2 and Formula 3 from Monaco, DTM from the Lausitzring, British GT from Donington Park, British Touring Cars from Snetterton, NASCAR from Charlotte, and Formula Regional European and Euro Formula from Spa. So with all that to get through, make sure you quickly subscribe to the channel, and let's jump into this look at the previous weekend's motorsport. So with Formula 1 and the Indy 500 happening in the same weekend as the Shanghai E-Prix, it is with regret I have to bump Formula E to the quagmire of the weekend roundup. But the racing in Shanghai was hardly first class. These two Formula E races were pretty poor. Race circuits and Formula E, same drafting problem we've seen elsewhere. It means that the first 3/4 of the race are completely pointless. Might as well give them minimal energy and have a 5-lap sprint. Race 1 had all the main title contenders working their way to the front, and Nick de Vries was also there. It was like a very tasty looking seal swimming amongst orcas. It was in that last 5 laps the race came alive. Mitch Evans wins again, with Wehrlein and Cassidy fighting to the line and Roland and Dennis scoring good points. The championship is really close, the racing is of mixed quality at best, and Nick de Vries held on to 8th to score his first points of the season. Cassidy though leads the championship and was on a run of 5 podiums in a row. Could he make it 6 in race 2? No, he couldn't, but he was 4th and he has extended the championship lead. Race 2 wasn't great. Sam Bird had an interesting return. He damaged Pascal Wehrlein's title hopes by giving him a puncture, and then clattered into the side of Nick de Vries before retiring. Antonio Felix da Costa won the race, and we have a clearer title picture. Cassidy leading from Wehrlein and Roland and Evans a bit further back. This was not a great weekend of racing for Formula E. There have been far better races, but we only have 2 rounds left in Portland and London, and the series is nearly done for 2024. Formula 2 was at Monaco. I don't think the streets of Monaco are a really good place for the Formula 1 support series. Literally any other racetrack is fine, but these series thrive on overtaking, and you don't see a lot of that at Monaco. Some in the support categories, but not loads. I had Victor Martins pegged as a title contender, but 2024 has been woeful for the French F3 champion. He crashed at the first corner and his weekend wasn't going to get much better. After the early safety car, we only had to wait 3 laps for the next crash, Pepe Marti hitting the wall. After that, it was follow the leader for much of this race. Championship leader Zane Maloney would have a poor end to the race, making contact with O'Sullivan before getting turned around for a safety car number 4. A week after AIX took their first podium, they took their first win. Taylor Barnard led the whole race and reacted to every restart incredibly well to take a first Formula 2 win. The feature race started with Victor Martins dropping from the front row to the midfield and out of contention for decent points. As I said, his 2024 has been truly awful. Jack Crawford hasn't had much luck either. He was the first retirement in this race after hitting the wall. Richard Verschoor was the star of Formula 2 at Monaco, taking his first pole and pulling a strong lead. It was heartbreaking to see him breaking down and getting nothing for his fine form. That left the door open to the title chasers like Hadjar and Aaron to chase the win, whilst others were on a different strategy. Oliver Behrman worked his way up as well, with some really good overtakes and a great fight with his teammate. There was one last sting in the tail for this race. Zach O'Sullivan waited for the absolute last minute to pit, and he needed a safety car. Joshua Durskin helped him out by driving into Zane Maloney and bouncing him off the Monaco wall. Virtual safety car was enough for O'Sullivan to win ahead of a very angry Isaac Hadjar, but the Frenchman is in top form. Paul Aron leads the championship after another consistent weekend for him, but Hadjar is just 2 points behind with Zane Maloney, Gabriel Bortoletto and Dennis Hager the nearest challengers for F2 glory. We also had Formula 3 at Monaco, and this was just carnage. 33 young drivers desperate for wins on a narrow, twisty street circuit. So obviously there was a red flag, a messy start to the weekend. After that it was a lot more well behaved, and Nicholas Solov, the young Bulgarian, took his first Formula 3 win. No red flag in the feature race, it was actually a very clean race with overtaking here and there and some good performances throughout the field. Joseph Loke really stood out as impressive in this race. We had a big crash in the last few laps with race 1 winner Solov colliding with Noel Leon, and Sami Megatunev ended his weekend with a double retirement, although I think he could have done more to avoid the crash. Lawrence Van Hopen would be the final victim of this race, fed into the wall by Joseph Loke. Gabriel Mini took the win and the championship lead, but it is really close between a whole heap of drivers and with plenty of weekends left on the calendar. DTM from the Lausitzring. The race was only 3 minutes young when the rain started to come down and the weather got so bad they red flagged the race. So the restart was a half-hour wet race. Despite the tricky conditions, everyone remained on the track for the most part. Jack Aitken was spun by Ian Guven, but otherwise it was a very sensible race, with Kelvin van der Linde taking the win. Mirko Bortolotti was the only one to brave slicks, and he was making progress at the end, but he ran out of laps. Race 2 started with some great action, but we got a safety car for a stricken Clemens Schmidt, and the race really picked up at the halfway mark. Thomas Preining fought his way past the Audi pair of Kelvin van der Linde and Ricardo Feller, who also made contact with each other. Unfortunately, a crash between Maximilian Paul and Lucas Stoltz brought out the safety car again. Thomas Preining won. These races had moments of excitement, but there isn't enough overtaking. Kelvin van der Linde leads the championship, but this was only round 2, so there is a long way to go. British touring cars from Snetterton. The racing has been better in 2024, and I was looking forward to seeing some great touring car action at Snetterton, and Bobby Thompson was back as well, in a very striking purple BMW. So, was the racing at Snetterton good to watch? Not for Scott Sumpton fans, he was off on lap 3. Good battle between Turkington and Ingram, who looked like they were happy to concede ground to Sutton in race 1. Bobby Thompson for his part got past Ash Sutton and into second place. Jake Hill banished the demons of Brands Hatch and took the win. Race 2 started with half the field in the pits and a slightly damp track. Well, it started raining again, so everyone who pitted for slicks was screwed, including all the championship leaders. Jake Hill led but had a 10-second penalty for a jump start, so he needed to build a gap. Andrew Watson lost control and lost second place. Ash Sutton's run of podiums ended off the track and with 0 points. Jake Hill was about to become his top challenger in 2024. He built a 16-second gap to second and won with ease in difficult conditions. Sam Osborne was on pole for the reverse grid race. He went off at turn 1. Not as off as Chris Smiley went in the first big crash of the weekend. Jake Hill led for a long while on his wets, but eventually the slicks caught him and 3 Toyotas ran at the front, chased by Ingram, Sutton and Turkington. Rob Huff took his first win for 20 years in the BTCC. Ash Sutton leads the championship, but still no wins. Turkington is second with Hill and Ingram tied for points and only 1 point behind Colin Turkington, 11 of leader Sutton. Very close between the 4, the rest are falling behind. British GT from Donington Park, a long 3-hour race. This race was affected by the weather like many others. Intermittent rain meant being on the right tyres at the right time could make or break your race. Just to prove this point, an hour in and a large chunk of the field aquaplaned off. A safety car was called far too late, but it should have been red flagged straight away. Cars were going off whilst crews were working on other vehicles. Not very safety conscious, and we are lucky no one was hurt. A red flag would have given everyone a chance to get on the right tyres and give marshals time to move all of the stricken vehicles. Eventually, the red flags did come out as the rain continued to fall. The resumed race had its moments, and the subsequent incidents meant everyone could pit under yellows. For the last 20 minutes we had a three-way fight for the win between a Mercedes, a Lamborghini and a McLaren. Sandy Mitchell passed Phil Keane after the latter had issues with traffic. The Barwell Lamborghini would take the win, and they have both cars at the top of the standings, but it is still very close and we are not even halfway yet. Good race, a lot of interruptions, but it was good. NASCAR and 600 miles of Charlotte, or nearly 600 miles. Carl Larson, man, he is committed to the cause. Trying to do both this and the Indy 500 on the same day. It didn't happen due to the bad weather, but that gave Justin Allgaier a chance to sub in for him. Maybe I was dealing with oval fatigue, but I found this race to be quite dull and long. There were intermittent interruptions with Noah Gregson having the biggest crash of the first 2 stages. Corey LaJoie had a spin and the race ended early due to the weather, just as Kyle Larson arrived to take over for number 5. Christopher Bell took the win, but rain really spoiled the parade, especially for Kyle Larson. Formula Regional European from Spa. 1 year on from the tragic passing of Delano Van Toff, Rafael Camara had been the star of round 1. Could he continue that form in round 2? Crazy start to this one, cars were shooting off everywhere, but after that the racing was exceptionally clean. Formula Regional European at Spa-Francorchamps, and there were barely any crashes. I'm honestly shocked. This series usually has about 3 safety cars a race on average. Edgar Pierre did go off late on, but it didn't interrupt the race. Noah Stromstead and Roman Belinsky did incredibly well in this race, but Rafael Camara worked his way up to the front and took his 2nd win of the season. Great race. Could race 2 be any better? All of the Premers were at the front, but Ugo Chukwi's Formula Regional campaign couldn't have gotten off to a much worse start to this season or this race, as he stalled and fell to the back. Roman Belinsky was pushed out right on the Kemmel Straight and had a very fast spin. Luckily everyone avoided him. That and Biram Bakhti having a massive crash brought out the first safety car of the weekend. Good racing in this one, and another win for Rafael Camara, who has clearly come on leaps and bounds since last year. James Wharton on the podium as well after not starting race 1. After 4 races, Camara already has a 60-point lead and is looking absolutely unbeatable. Finally, we had Euro Formula, also from Spa-Francorchamps circuit, and despite the small field size, I will concede they do try and put on a good show. Levente Revesh got past Brad Benavides, fully locked up and with slight contact, but the Bulgarian got ahead of the American points leader. It didn't last long, Benavides took the lead, the gap started to form and the excitement began to wane. Another win for the American, and he won in race 2, although Michael Shin made him work for it. Could he make it 3 out of 3? The Spa decided to make it tricky. It rained, as it often does at Spa, so safety car start for just 1 lap. Luckily there were only 6 cars in this race. Jacob Bergmeister had a spin, and then Levente Revesh had a spin, but Gerard Shee handled the conditions very well and took his first win. Brad Benavides now has a big lead in the championship. So that was all the racing from the previous weekend. My race of the weekend is obviously the Indy 500, but if I had to choose something else, British touring cars maybe. Race 2 I guess was interesting. A lot of the racing was just fine, not overly exciting, just fine. Next weekend we have IndyCar, Indy NXT and the IMSA from Detroit, NASCAR from Illinois, World Rally Championship from Italy, TCR Europe from the Salzburg Ring, GB3 from Spa-Francorchamps, Super GT and 3 hours from Suzuka. The Intercontinental GT is part of a 24-hour race at the Nürburgring, and there is even a rally raid. Unfortunately, I am on holiday, so I won't be around to cover it next week, but you go ahead and enjoy the racing. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favourite race of the weekend? Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.